Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Boley Smillie, CEO of Guernsey Post. Boley, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Tony. Second time, so I'm pleased to be back.
Yeah. um, let's have a look at the past, the present, and the future as far as the postal service is concerned, because there's been a hell of a change in the last 25 years, hasn't there? Um, if we go back, say, 25 years, what sort of ratio was it between parcels and letter mail?
Yeah, I mean, certainly over that period of time, there's been a wholesale change from being a kind of letter delivery business that delivered a few parcels to, quite frankly, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite now. I mean, we still deliver a fair few letters these days, but of course, many of the things that we used letter post for 20 years ago, whether it's paying bills, receiving statements, are very much digitized now. But yeah, no, we're delivering now in a week as many parcels as we would have delivered in a year 25 years ago. It's that much of a shift, and probably in the next year or two, we'll be delivering more parcels than we do letters.
Yeah. So the actual proportion of letters has fallen dramatically over the years. Um, and presumably it is going to diminish, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're very much focused on where the growth opportunities are. I mean, letters, I must say, is still a really important part of our business. Really good volumes to have, and helps keep us sustainable. But e-commerce is where the growth is, where the real growth opportunity is for us, and that's something we focused on quite intensely over the last few years, in particular, just making sure we were the kind of partner of choice for all the major carriers, and building our parcel business.
It's incredible, isn't it, when you think back in those days when Aurigny had a half-hourly service to Jersey, and it was
Yeah,
full of business people in the morning and in the evening, and they've all been replaced by emails and other digital devices. It's quite incredible how it's all happened from that point of view.
it's
Now, of
very
course, sorry.
yeah, no, so it's very true, and of course we were using a lot of those flights to convey mail between the islands as well at the same time. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that not everything has changed for the better.
No, not at all. And of course, I suppose in terms of Alderney's relationship with Guernsey Post, the golden age was when you had that daily freighter coming up at 11 o'clock with virtually everything on it.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking back, that was certainly the best method I think that we've had in our history of getting the products to the island. A number of things changed. So, of course, the Aurigny and its fleet being one, but also alongside that, as the kind of parcels market has grown and expanded within the UK, there's not a lot of parcel companies now that are flying product around. So where we're slightly constrained here in Guernsey with getting product to Alderney is where the kind of originating parcel carrier doesn't have a license to fly freight with the CAA. We're not able to do that for them from here. So that's why a lot of the product that you receive in Alderney has to be sent by the boat, regardless of whether there's any capacity on the aircraft or not.
Currently, you're still operating a mail plane from the UK every day that gets in about 7 o'clock in the morning, goes back about 7 o'clock in the evening. Um, Jersey had a similar setup. They dropped it. Do we know why?
Yeah, so that about a year ago, last May, Royal Mail began a consultation looking at the services to the islands, Guernsey, Jersey, and by definition Alderney as well, and also including the Isle of Man, and predominantly that was around looking at whether air transportation was still viable, kind of in the context of where they're at as a business. And Royal Mail revealing nothing that everyone doesn't know, have been going through some considerably difficult times themselves of late. So there is a focus on costs within the business. So when they began that consultation, it was clearly with a view that they wanted to reduce the number of aircraft that they have flying in the skies with mail, and in particular to the islands. Now, what differentiates Guernsey from the other two is that we have quite significant export volumes here still from the island. So a number of the big brand greetings card companies, personalized greetings card companies are based here and have very successful production facilities here. So, the cost of that aircraft is shared by us.
Yeah.
So it makes it economically more viable to continue with that. But in both Jersey and Isle of Man, when that consultation ended, within a fairly short space of time, the aircraft was withdrawn,
Yeah.
and now there is only essentially the sea services to the island.
So you contribute part of the cost, and Royal Mail contribute the rest. Is that right?
Yeah, we I mean, we basically they pay for the flight coming to the island, and we
Yeah.
pay for
The return.
for the return, and it's it's an arrangement that's been in place, well, forever, 30, 40 years, and it's always worked quite successfully on the basis that the export volumes match the import volumes,
Yeah.
and therefore it is making it economical. But there are other considerations these days. So the environmental impact is one that's needs to be considered. But for us, that aircraft is imperative, certainly whilst we've got those export volumes, and at the same time it's what keeps it viable.
Yeah. So it is sustainable for for at least a few years to come, hopefully, and even longer if you can keep up the send them back as much as they're sending you, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, Raw Mail as an organisation are going through significant challenges at
Yeah.
the moment. I think we'll come on to their kind
Yeah.
of USO changes, but yeah, we try our best to maintain a good relationship, and hopefully, all of this volume, of course, that we're sending them is in their interest, because we're using them for delivery in the UK.
Part of the letter mail still comes up with Aurigny every day. How do
It
you
does.
how do you
Yeah.
differentiate between what goes on the plane and what goes on the boat once a week?
Well, so there's two factors really, I suppose. From the issue I was sort of talking about earlier is, it very much depends on whether the parcel or mail carrier that we're receiving the volume from has the appropriate authority from the CAA to fly products.
Yeah.
Where they don't, that immediately has to go by boat, and
Right.
that I'm afraid is the majority of carriers. Royal Mail are the exception. We can send everything that we receive by Royal Mail by air, and so the space that we use with Aurigny is predominantly Royal Mail product. So that's the first decision. The second is obviously around the capacity on the aircraft, and you mentioned earlier that what I would sort of describe the good old days of the freighter, where of course we were number one priority on that flight, given it was a freight flight. In today's terms, our product is always going to be secondary to passengers and any operational issues that obviously Aurigny might be having at the time. So we try to keep in close contact with our airport handlers here, and if we can't see any reasonable prospect of product going by air, we use the very reliable boat service
Yeah.
as much as we need to. But yeah, it can be quite frustrating. If there was a daily service for freight, we would definitely be able to use it and
But
provide quite a bit of volume.
not much likelihood of that, I'm afraid. I
I,
mean,
I, I
you know, I don't comment on this one, but I mean, the passenger service, as you probably read, is one of the worst ones, Alderney to Southampton, one of the worst ones in the UK at the moment, which is a shame, but there we are. Let's move on to other things. Postcodes.
mm,
GY9 3XD. A friend of mine said, you know, knowing that I was going to have a chat with you, it's a huge postcode area. I think there's about 11 roads and 100 houses or something crazy like that. And of course, the idea of the postcode in the first place was to sort of knock it down to a relatively small number of properties per digit, as it were. Are there any plans to revise these postcodes, or is it
no,
just too far gone?
yeah, we've got no plans. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out if there were any kind of if there's any sort of customer feedback whereby we could understand the reason for
Yeah.
changing it. Essentially, um, we use the postcodes predominantly to get the product as far as Guernsey. Thereafter, the team in Alderney, who do a brilliant job, I must get that in,
Yep. Yes,
are
I must agree.
they're not sorting using the postcodes. They're sorting using the actual address and
Yeah.
their local knowledge. So I don't know specifically what the feedback might be, but it shouldn't be in any way impacting um, your level of service to the island. And if it did, we would certainly look at it, but no plans to alter anything
Okay.
um, without that without the basis for doing so.
Now, perhaps you could answer this question. Guaranteed delivery. Now, I know with Alderney, it's not going to be guaranteed next day for the mainland for obvious reasons. But I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they said it took 10 days to get a letter from Alderney to Scotland on a guaranteed delivery basis. Presumably, you clear your racks on a regular basis. So,
Uh,
is it all down to the Royal Mail?
well, first of all, absolutely no justifying that whatsoever. No explanation I can give you that would justify uh, 10 days. You're right. The product that leaves Alderney on a daily basis is received here. It's dispatched immediately. Um, Royal Mail have had quite well publicised quality of service challenges. They are being fined by their regulator for not achieving their kind of quality service targets. But regardless of that, there is nothing that would explain 10 days. I'm always very happy to, if any of our customers are listening to this, which presumably they will be,
Hope so.
then then if they've got examples and they want to send those through, we'll provide a better explanation than the one that I've given. But no, 10 days is ridiculous, and I could point the finger at Royal Mail, but even their quality of service uh, achievements at the moment wouldn't justify
Yeah.
anywhere near being that long.
No, no, no. Um, and you, you know, you're duty bound to make a refund in those circumstances, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, duty bound or otherwise, we would make a refund. I think on that.
Yeah, yeah.
On
But
that.
you would take the hit, not Royal Mail.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of way our arrangement works. Is that that when a customer posts from the bailiwick of Guernsey, including Alderney, we are we are we are we are the ones that are taking the money and are bound by that service expectation. And
Yeah.
the partners we choose, which of course is predominantly Royal Mail, are our problem, not the posting customer. If that makes sense.
And of course, really, there's no alternative as far as the partnership's concerned, is there? There's no one on the UK in the UK that can offer the sort of breadth of service that the Royal Mail do.
Yeah, I mean, Royal Mail are, I've said a couple of times they're having challenges, as are every single postal
Yeah,
operator. To
yeah,
be fair, we're all going through the same thing. For them, certainly the parcels market has evolved reasonably quickly in the UK. So there are a number of credible alternatives for delivering parcels in the UK.
mm,
not so much on letters. In fact, not at all really on letters. I would argue, and they have an infrastructure and a network that is really quite kind of impressive, actually, in order to be able to deliver to every single address every day. And so, we've historically always tried to use Royal Mail, given it provides and supports the wider universal service obligation that they have, which we would all be at a loss without.
Mm, mm. There's been a bit of a scandal with barcodes on UK stamps recently. How's that come about?
Yeah, so Royal Mail in recent years have moved to a method whereby all the stamps are now barcoded. And I must add, this is not the case for products from Guernsey or Alderney. We don't have those attractive barcodes. I say somewhat sarcastically on our stuff, but it's very much a kind of revenue protection method being deployed by Royal Mail. Essentially, it allows them to check more thoroughly that the value of postage paid is correct,
Yeah.
and the quite sizable charges that are being imposed are where they say the posting customer hasn't paid sufficient postage.
Right. But some of the stamps that they've been issuing are iffy, aren't they? In terms of the fact that almost forgeries.
Yeah, I mean that is always a big problem, and over the years there has been occasions where we've had those challenges as well, where forgeries can exist. But yeah, it's a really tricky. The postal services that exist are traditionally very, very complicated.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite difficult to, as a posting customer, to make sure you're paying the correct amount. And what we actually see sometimes is people tend to more often overpay than underpay, just to be sure that they've got the right amount. But when you automate those processes, which Royal Mail have done, and maybe that's partly because of the scale that they have, it's going to kind of throw up a number of issues that they were previously unaware of, and I think they're trying to work through those now.
Okay, continuing with Royal Mail and their second class service, how does that work in terms of deliveries to Guernsey? Do Royal Mail deliberately hold the thing back for a few days before they actually put it on the plane?
You're right. I mean, technically that's correct. So what differentiates between, so first class predominantly is about delivering next day nationwide, including to the Channel Islands, albeit that's changed in Jersey and Isle of Man last year with the removal of the aircraft.
Yeah.
Second class typically has a kind of 3-day service expectation. So you post on a Monday, it's delivered by Thursday.
Yeah.
And the way that is supposed to drive economies within the postal system is that the product is held at the start of the journey, so it is using the most efficient form of transport to get around the network. So it should not be held in delivery offices for any time. It's all about using, and for the most part, using surface transport rather than air transport in order to get it around. So if it takes 3 days, it's at the point of posting where that pause, I suppose, in its conveyance starts, not at the delivery network. However, there are cases now where that does seem to be happening. That when product arrives in Guernsey, for the most part, we deliver it as soon as we receive it.
Yeah.
So we don't really distinguish between first class and second class and any other business services that Royal Mail do. If ever we do, it's because the mail plane is late, or there's been some disruption of any sort. But it'll be it's the same for Alderney, the team there when they're receiving product, albeit they have to deal with some more challenging circumstances with the periodic arrival of the freighter there. the boats.
The boat, yeah.
They're not necessarily distinguishing. They're using their experience to deliver the stuff that needs to be delivered straight away, but they're not distinguishing by service so much. They're trying to get everything delivered as quickly as possible.
Staying on the subject of UK second class post, they're now talking about cutting the service to perhaps 2 or 3 days a week.
Mm.
How's that likely to affect you?
Well, it essentially means that the second, what I think is happening, or what I think they're proposing, is that they're going to extend the time they have to deliver second class items, possibly to 5 days,
Yeah,
and that will mean that will give them more time at the delivery points to sort of hold mail and deliver it in larger quantities but less frequently, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
We're,
yeah,
we're, we're working with Royal Mail now to be clear that we understand what the implications of that to the islands will be. I think the second class service over the coming years may well evolve into the service that most people are using, simply as a consequence of affordability. So we're seeing, first class next day delivery rates increase quite rapidly over a small number of years, and by default, this second class service will be the kind of more regular postal service that I think people within the UK will use.
yeah. They come to accept it because the cost of a first class stamp is now £1.10 in the UK, and I mean, I suppose you've got to say to yourself that by putting a level of that size, you're going to be subject to the law of diminishing returns in any case. So what you've just said, makes sense.
It's a bit worse than you said, actually. It's 135 now. It's gone up
Good heavens.
on the first.
In that case, double diminishing
Yeah,
returns.
but you're right. We're sort of competing with that dilemma all the time. Really, is that we've got a lot of digital substitution going on. I mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
Customers are not using postal services, understandably, in the way they used to, because we can check bank statements online. I can't remember the last time I wrote a check.
No.
There are still
What
people.
are they, Boley? What are they?
Yeah, well, my own children don't know what it doesn't know what a checkbook is.
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So it is changing, but for us, and that come back to the e-commerce growth for us.
Well,
We try and we're not trying to swim against the tide.
no.
The letter products. We're not going to convert people back to writing letters to each other. It's really important that service exists for those people that want to do it.
Yeah.
But they are fewer and far between, and we sort of want to go with the tide. And e-commerce is such a growth opportunity for us. We saw huge uptake in people shopping online during COVID, understandably, and it reminded us that it's become very much a lifeline service now, that people tend to be shopping online, not just because of price, and not even always just because of convenience, actually because they have to these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I mean the high streets have retreated to the point where, there are virtually no major shops around anymore. I mean, I was in Woking a few months ago, and I was trying to get a couple of coaxial plugs for the television, and there's nothing in Woking town centre that offers that. They sort of say, "Well, you've got to go out of town." Well, I haven't got a car, so I had to, wait until I got back here and saw our good friends at London House to get me coaxials. But that you're right about the fact that there is no choice for a lot of people. It's the only way that it works, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think that it must be a tough, being in retail, bricks and mortar retail is a tough place to be at the moment.
Yeah.
That those that are being that are successful seem to kind of also have embraced that online opportunity themselves. From our perspective, I'd love to say we invented the internet. Of course, we didn't. So we're in this case, we've had some wins and losses as a consequence of how that's changed our lives over the last 20 years. As I said, we're seeing significantly less letter volume, but that's being made up in part because of the extra e-commerce. And I understand that's difficult for retailers, but it's still going to be there whether Guernsey Post is there or not.
Yeah.
So our job is to facilitate that as best we can.
Do you think it was a mistake for Royal Mail to have lost its monopoly going back quite a few years now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Royal Mail, the way this industry has changed, certainly in the time I've been around, it's unrecognizable. So, well, I'm not ashamed to admit, I've been in the business for about 30 years, and it feels like I've worked for two or three businesses in that time.
Yeah.
Given the way everything keeps changing, and our biggest risk as a legacy kind of postal business at the moment is keeping pace with the scale of change that's happening. And I'd like to think we've done that and doing that as successfully as we can do. With a company like Royal Mail, where of course the scale is much greater, we're all dealing with the same challenges. But
yeah,
I'd be the first to admit it's easier for us to address those issues than it is for a company that's 1,000 times bigger than we are. But they clearly haven't kept pace, and their kind of legacy infrastructure was built and designed for a customer demand that is sort of 10, 20, 30 years old. And one way of dealing with that, I suppose, is you introduce competition, and competition structures itself around what customers need today. And of course that's happened. We see now that in the UK, the biggest the company that is delivering, e-commerce wise, Amazon is obviously the biggest player in the UK, and Amazon deliver more parcels themselves than Royal Mail do. So it shows you that, how that has sort of evolved over the years, and that volume is also spread across a number of different other operators.
Yeah.
So when I compare where we're at, where we've worked really hard to try and make sure we're the delivery partner of choice for all of the competitors, as Royal Mail might call them, including companies like Amazon, we've managed to kind of structure our business around that, and Royal Mail, one way or another, haven't been successful in doing the same, and so they don't have the same level of parcel growth that we have. They've only got a percentage of that market share. I think the sad thing is that Royal Mail is a fantastic business. I think there's and again we get this here and in Alderney, that there is a lot of trust between customers and their postie.
Yeah.
And we saw that again. Twice I've mentioned COVID. I must stop talking about it. But during COVID, actually the postie was quite often the only person that people would see
Yes, that's right.
on a daily basis, waving the window or whatever it might be. So I'm not sure, without being too controversial, that customers have that same relationship with other delivery operators in the way that they've done with their postie. And in the UK, I think that Royal Mail's infrastructure and all the good people that work for it, that's under threat. The changes to the USO, their performance as a business. I hope we're never talking about Royal Mail as a thing of the past. But they do need to reform, and they need to do it quickly.
Yeah. Coming on to Guernsey Post now. profitability still turning a bit of a profit?
We didn't last year, so we've had a huge 12 months of change.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we invested last year in new parcel sorting equipment. I say new parcel sorting equipment. It was new, but it's not like we had old parcel sorting equipment. It was a first time investment for us, and that again is built around the kind of e-commerce growth. So that project, which was sort of running for between 12 and 18 months, concluded around about October last year. We purchased a bit of equipment, which the supplier is Bosystic. They've done a really good job. The machine has worked according to its specifications pretty much from the day that we installed it. It was extremely useful over the Christmas peak. Sorts around 6,000 items an hour.
Wow.
Which is really impressive. It's dominant. I can send you some photos if you like. I don't know if you can post them up, but it's a big bit of equipment for us. It dominates our sorting office now. But it's an investment that will, for the next sort of 10 to 15 years, pay for itself very quickly, just in terms of the profile of volume that we had. So some big investments in the automation and also the building to accommodate, which we spent about £3 million over the course of the last year, restructuring the business to make sure it was fit for purpose. We've been in a loss-making position for about 18 months. The new financial year has just started for us 1st of April, and we're very hopeful of reaching a break-even position again this year, which will be a tremendous achievement if we can do that, given the constraints.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to invest in stuff like that. There's no alternative, is there, really? What about other services? Currency and philately, that's still going okay?
Yeah, I mean, dealing with those in the other order, philately for us, there are a lot of posts now who are, essentially moving to kind of more simplistic stamp production methods.
Stick on labels.
Yeah. Our philatelic team do a great job here. I mean, in the 80s, the philatelic business was bringing in revenues in the millions of pounds. Not the case by any stretch of the imagination now. It's in the tens of thousands of pounds in terms of profit, but it is still an important contributor over the course of the business. And when we compare and benchmark with what other posts are doing, we think we're doing okay. But like a bit like saying with the letter mail, that there aren't many 16-year-old stamp collectors these days.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? It's my generation, possibly yours, that are collectors, and the youngsters just don't get involved in things like that anymore. What about the currency side?
Currency's obviously had a really tough time over the last few years. When no one was traveling, there wasn't many people buying foreign exchange, so we literally the revenues fell off a cliff. We've seen a recovery of sorts post COVID, albeit there are people that are becoming less and less reliant on cash. So when people go on holiday now, other brands are available, but people tend to have the Revolut cards or other means of managing their kind of foreign exchange. So it again, we see a declining revenue base, but it's still a service we provide, albeit we have to think very carefully about how we provide that going forward, particularly in the context of the kind of regulatory framework around operating kind of money services.
Money laundering and all that stuff.
Exactly. It's a difficult business to be in and a complicated business to be in.
Yeah. Electric fleet, all up to expectations. That's been around for a few years now, hasn't it?
100% successful.
Good.
I say this every time. I think it's without question, when I think of all the things we've done, if I had a top three, that would be top. We started in, I think, 2017, so we're 7 years in now,
That's right.
which has flown by. I think by 2020, our entire fleet our delivery fleet was electric. We've then subsequently installed solar panels in a deal with Guernsey Electricity on the roof at Envoy House, and there's enough there was more than enough electricity generated on our roof to power the entire fleet, which is over 100 vehicles,
That's incredible.
Which is really good.
Yeah.
We've seen savings probably in repairs and maintenance of 35 to 45%. Just far less to go wrong with an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Our posties seem to like them. I've not found one that doesn't. No one is knocking on my door saying I'd like a diesel vehicle, please. Your customers seem to be okay. They're probably, the only operational challenge we have is they're quite, obviously a lot quieter. So when we're driving around the smaller roads in the lanes, I have to be even more careful. But no, it's been really good. And then a couple of years ago, we went a step further, installed solar panels on some of our vehicles as well, so solar mats, which on our larger vehicles, they effectively fuel all of the onboard electrical systems. So things like tail lifts and air conditioning and heating in the vehicles are all powered by the solar panels.
Boley, would you believe we've run out of time? It's been super as ever talking to you. Thank you so much. Perhaps come back at some later stage for more updates on everything. But really am grateful for you sparing me some time, because I know you're a very, very busy gentleman. You take care.
You can take care too, and hello to everyone in Alderney. And
thanks, Boley.
Again,
cheers.
Thanks to our
bye.
cheers then.